Sometimes I wonder if it would have been better if I never made it out. If I had disappeared like the others, quietly, without anyone asking where I went or what I saw. Because living with what I remember, living with what I stayed silent about, it doesn't feel like living at all. I didn't speak up when Ally Carter did. I couldn't. Back then, my voice belonged to them. My fear belonged to them. My survival depended on forgetting, or at least pretending to. And for years I did. I kept my head down, played along, told myself that what happened in that house, to her, to all of us, wasn't mine to talk about. But I was there. I was brought in around the same time she was. We were just kids, the kind no one would come looking for. The kind who don't make the news when they vanish. I still remember the first time I saw her, behind the gates, when we were both wearing clothes that didn't fit and eyes that had already seen too much. She looked at me like she knew, like she could already feel what was waiting on the other side of that hallway. I didn't have her courage. She fought. Even then, she asked questions. She tried to leave. And me, I followed orders. I looked away. I survived. And when she finally started to speak out, calling out Diddy, exposing the rooms, the people, the things they made us watch and do, I watched from a distance. I told myself it wasn't my place. I saw what they did to her. I saw what they made her become. And I know what happens to people who speak. They don't just disappear, they get erased. Now it's not just Ally thereafter. It's everyone who was ever part of that house. Everyone who ever saw the truth and chose to bury it. Everyone like me. I should have said something a long time ago. Now, I don't think I'll get another chance. There was something different about Ally from the start. Even before she ever said a word, she carried herself like someone who remembered things clearly. And that alone was dangerous in a place like that. Most of us had already started erasing pieces of ourselves just to get through the day. But her memory didn't break as easily. I think that's why they feared her. And it's definitely why they hurt her. I remember watching her being pulled aside that first night, taken into one of the side wings no one ever came back from. She didn't scream. Not then. But the silence that followed felt louder than anything else I'd heard in that house. We all noticed. Some looked away. Others buried their faces in their food. But I couldn't stop staring at the door she'd gone through. That night, I didn't sleep. The parties weren't really parties. We all knew that. The music was loud enough to drown out what went on behind the walls, and the lights were dim enough so no one could see the fear on the faces of the ones being offered. It was always the same routine, powerful men, dressed in smiles, surrounded by children pretending to be happy. Ally was one of the ones they paraded. I was one of the ones who cleaned up afterward. The difference was she ended up in front of the cameras. I stayed behind them. I still don't know if made me luckier or just more of a coward. When she resurfaced years later, calling them out by name, exposing every filthy corner of what they'd done to us, I couldn't believe she was still alive. And a part of me hated her for it. Not because she lied, because she didn't. Because she remembered everything I had tried to forget. And because now I knew they wouldn't stop with her. Ally Carter didn't just break the silence. She reminded the world that there were others. Others who were there. Others who saw. Others like me. And I think that's when they decided they had to make the rest of us disappear. Too quietly, one by one. Just like they always did. You'd never guess what that house really was if you saw it from the outside. Clean gates. Fresh paint. Black cars parked neatly across the driveway, like nothing evil ever touched the ground they rested on. Even the grass was always trimmed, like someone was trying too hard to make it all look normal. But nothing about that place was normal. It was one of those homes tucked deep into the hills, far from traffic, far from cameras. The kind of place you could scream and no one would come. The kind of place where things were designed to stay hidden, behind walls, Behind smiles, behind contracts, we weren't allowed near certain rooms, not without permission. And permission always came with a condition, usually silence. I learned quickly which halls to avoid, which stairs creaked too loud, and how to keep my eyes on the floor when they brought the guests in. Diddy didn't live there, not full time. But when he came through, everything changed. The air got tighter, the staff got quieter, and the children, we knew to disappear into corners. That's where I saw Allie again. It was maybe the third or fourth time. She was dressed differently. Makeup she didn't want, a tight smile that looked rehearsed. They made her serve drinks that night, but they weren't really watching her hands, they were watching her fear. They fed off it. You could see it in their eyes. No one called it trafficking. No one called it what it was. It was always just business. Just a private event. Just a favor for someone important. That house was a machine. And we were just the parts no one wanted to talk about. I cleaned floors stained with things I couldn't explain. I fixed broken equipment in rooms I was told not to question. And sometimes, if you were quiet enough, you could hear the music cut out just for a second, and what came through in its place was something you never wanted to hear again. People outside have no idea what that place was built for. But we knew. We still know. And if you're listening carefully, so will you. I don't remember the first time I saw her on screen. I just remember the way my stomach dropped when I realized it was her, that same girl from the hallway. The one they tried to break. The one I thought they buried in silence, in trauma, maybe in death. But she wasn't gone. She had found her way back. Her voice was different now. Older, but still sharp, still angry. Still holding pieces of the truth none of us were ever supposed to carry. I watched her talk about the men, about the tunnels, about the children who never came back. She spoke about the house, not in riddles or half memories, but with the kind of detail that only someone who lived through it could ever repeat. And the moment I heard her speak, I froze. Not because I doubted her. I never did. But because hearing her say it out loud made it real again. Made me see it all. The rooms, the whispers, the faces, the laughter that sounded too loud when someone cried. Everything I had buried inside myself for years started to climb its way back up, and I didn't know how to stop it. I kept telling myself to say something, to at least reach out, to let her know I remembered too, that she wasn't the only one left holding the weight. But I couldn't, not when I knew what they were capable of. Not when I had seen what happened to the others who tried. One boy did try to come forward with just a lawyer. 2 weeks later, he was found in a motel, slumped in the bathtub, a story never told. They said it was self-inflicted. But we knew better. You don't just decide to disappear when you finally find the courage to talk. Allie knew the risks. She kept going anyway. She didn't have a platform. She was in pain, and she used it. Every time she shared another story, I felt it, not as an attack, but as a reminder. That silence is a decision. That watching is a choice. That hiding, even when it's the only thing you know how to do, still costs something. And I've been paying that price every day since. Because the moment she opened her mouth, the rules changed. It wasn't just about her anymore. It became about everyone who had been in her situation. Everyone who had been used and hidden and left behind. And I know they realized that too. She was never supposed to speak, and I was never supposed to remember. I saw her eyes before I heard her voice. They weren't scared, they were done. Allie had filmed the video in silence, as if speaking was just a formality. Like she already knew the moment the footage existed, so would the consequence. Her mouth moved slowly, carefully, and when she said his name, it didn't come out as rage or even defiance. It came out like she'd already been marked, like she was just finishing the ritual they had started for her long ago. The video glitched once, then twice. Her face disappeared for a breath, replaced by that kind of voice only those of us from the house could recognize. a static blackness that mirrored the seconds before the steel door opened. Back when we were kids and still thought being chosen meant something sacred. But it never was. It was punishment masked as purpose. It was a submission carved into flesh and memory. When the screen cleared, she was gone. And something in me folded. I shut the laptop like that would stop whatever had already been set in motion. But it was too late. Because somewhere else, in some other quiet apartment, someone else had just been erased. Nia didn't make noise. She never had. Her way of surviving was disappearing in plain sight, changing numbers, deleting photos, using fake names and email headers. She didn't talk about the house, but she didn't deny it either. I used to think that meant safety. I was wrong. Her cousin called me in the middle of the night. She said Nia's apartment door was locked from the inside, her bed made, nothing stolen, no signs of a struggle. There was only one thing left on the mattress, a crumpled paper with burned edges and faint pencil lines. Stick figures holding hands, drawn like a child might, who had made those drawings in the house during our healing sessions. They made us kneel on the floor and pretend we were whole. That paper smelled faintly like bleach. Beneath it, something metallic lingered. It was the same scent that clung to the basement hallway, the one that never washed off, no matter how many showers you took. They're not taking people away anymore. They're cleaning up history. Not just physically, but digitally, spiritually. I checked for Nia's name online. Every record past 2019 was gone. No photos, no articles. Even archived versions of her volunteer work were missing. I thought it might be a coincidence until I searched for my own name next. Mentions erased, posts scrubbed. Old files from my hard drive returned blank. Images I knew I saved were gone. They weren't deleting memories. They were erasing proof. I started noticing the smell in my own home. That same thick chemical scent, sharper than any cleaner I owned. I hadn't let anyone in. The windows were shut. But my kitchen table had been wiped bare, and a layer of something sticky lined the inside of my drawers. My phone, which hadn't left my side, now held no photos from the house. Not even the group shot Al I once swore she'd bury in a safe. It was as if none of us had ever stood together. I kept trying to push the fear back, to make sense of it, but it crept in anyway. Each night I remembered a little more. The hallway, the flickering bulb above the steel door, the shiver in the walls when someone was taken. And every time I thought about it, I saw Allie's face. Not the one from the video, but the one from years ago, right after her last time in the punishment room. Her lip had been split. Her eye was swollen. But she didn't cry. She only stared ahead, like she had already made peace with something I still feared too much to name. She walked past me that night without saying a word. I remember not being able to meet her gaze. Not because I didn't care, but because I did, and I knew I'd never have her courage. Staying silent was the only way I knew how to stay alive. Now the silence is circling back. It started with small things, a corrupted file, an unreadable USB. Then came the knocks, soft, deliberate taps at my door around 3 a.m., always 3, never 4. I checked the hallway camera, static. I checked the doorknob, cold. One morning, I found a folded photo on my floor, no note, no envelope. Just a grainy image of the hallway outside the punishment room. My back was to the camera. Others stood beside me, blurred, faceless. On the back, faint pen marks are barely legible beneath the smudge of red, one by one. It wasn't a message. It was a countdown. They've started closing the circle, quietly, efficiently. Not with violence, but with removal. Nia, Allie, others I haven't heard from in months. There's no noise, no closure. Just a slow disappearance, like shadows pulled off walls. I tell myself I'm not next, that I've kept quiet long enough to be forgotten. But that's a lie, because the ones who stay silent aren't forgotten, they're just kept in reserve. The body remembers, the house remembers. And I think maybe I was never meant to leave. Not really. I can't sleep anymore. Even when the apartment is quiet, something presses against the edges of the dark. A kind of presence, not loud, not ghostly, just present. Like someone is holding their breath on the other side of the wall, waiting for mine to stop first. Every sound feels coded. The fridge hummed. The floor creaks. The faucet drips. They don't sound like home anymore. They sound like surveillance. And I've lived with this long enough to know the difference. The day after Nia vanished, the lights in my hallway started flickering. Just the ones by my door. Maintenance said it was a wiring issue. But when I asked the guy working on it if he'd been up there before, he paused too long before saying no. They're not coming for me with force. That would be too loud, too fast. They're doing it like they did to her, like they did to us in that house. Slowly, with patience, making you question your memory first, then your sanity, then your existence. I checked my front door last night. There were no locks left on it. Every survivor I've known from that place had a different breaking point. For some, it was the flashbacks. For others, it was the sound of the metal latch clicking shut. For me, it was the smell. It started coming from under the sink. Not strong at first, just enough to make you notice. A mix of something chemical and old, the exact scent I remember from the floor outside the punishment room. That copper saw staleness, like something had been left behind to rot, or maybe to wait. I cleaned, I scrubbed, I replaced the pipes. But it's not coming from anything physical. It's coming from what they left inside me. That scent, its memory turned into scent. And it's telling me they're almost here. There was a knock again tonight. Same time, same pattern. But this time, they didn't wait. The door cracked open when I got there. Not fully, just an inch. As if they wanted me to know they could, whenever they chose. I didn't open it further. I didn't have to. There was something on the floor. Not a threat, not a message. Just a single item, a child's bracelet. Cheap plastic, faded colors. I recognized it immediately. It belonged to Malik. He was 12 when he vanished from the house. Never made it out. He used to hold that bracelet like it was a shield. Finding it here, outside my door, it wasn't a warning. It was a reminder that none of us ever really left. We just got older, quieter, easier to clean up. I think about running, but there's nowhere left that hasn't been touched. Changing cities doesn't change fingerprints. New phones still ring with old numbers. And no matter where I go, the smell always finds me first. I know they're watching. Not to hurt me, not yet. But to measure the moment I break, the second I stop hiding and start remembering out loud, that's when they'll come. That's why I'm writing this. Not for revenge, not for attention, but because if I disappear, someone needs to know I existed, that we all did. I'm not a hero. I stayed silent. I watched Allie burn while I kept my head down. I watched others fall apart from the inside out, pretending it wouldn't happen to me. But now with the knocks, the photos, the bracelet, I know better. They're not trying to find out who's talking. They're trying to make sure no one ever does. If you're seeing this, it means I haven't disappeared yet, but I'm close. This might be the last time I get to speak. Not because I'm running, not because I'm hiding, but because they've started clearing the rest of us out, quietly, carefully, with no news, no noise. Just missing files, unanswered text, doors left open with no one inside. I didn't want to be Allie. I didn't have her strength. I didn't speak out when she did, because I thought staying silent would keep me alive. I thought if I kept my head down, if I erased myself enough, they'd leave me alone, that I was small enough to survive unnoticed. But I was wrong. They don't come for you because you talk, they come because you know. Because even your silence is dangerous when you've seen what I've seen. And now they're closing in again. Everything is coming back, not in my mind, but in real life. Around me, inside my home. Like the house never let go of me, even when I left it. I don't know if this video will stay up. I don't know if you'll even get to finish it. But if you do, I need you to do something I couldn't. Don't look away. Don't scroll to the next video and forget our stories. Don't tell yourself it's too dark to be true. Don't assume we're all just chasing attention, because that's what they want. That's how they win. They count on people doubting us, they feed on silence, and they are very, very good at making people vanish. So if I go quiet after this, if my voice is gone, if you never hear another update, don't believe the story they tell you. There will be no headline, no body, no answers. Only a question, why do they always disappear after speaking his name? And by the time anyone asks it, it might already be too late. So if you're still watching, remember what Ally tried to do. Remember what we were made to forget, and hold on to it like it matters. Because it does. Because it always did. They always said she made it up. The first time Ally spoke, really spoke, they called her delusional. Said she was mentally unwell, that no one kidnapped her, that no one trafficked her, that no powerful man in the industry had ever touched her, used her, discarded her, that her memories were fake, implanted, damaged, and for a while that lie worked. Her name became a rumor, her face a meme. The world watched her drown in silence, while headlines twisted her into a cautionary tale, not of abuse, but of instability. She went quiet after that, not because she was done talking, but because she was watching her own shadow grow teeth. But I remember what she looked like when we first arrived. We were just kids, her eyes were wide, but her spirit was louder than any scream. Even then, they tried to break her down first. They hated her boldness, her refusal to fold. The rest of us learned to keep our heads down. But Ally looked at them, and they hated her for it. So when she ran and said she escaped, and whispered about the house and the names and the nights that wouldn't leave her skin, I didn't question her, because I saw it too. And now, I think they're trying again. Not to kill her, not yet, but to erase her slowly, like they did before. They're tightening the walls around her the same way they did to me. People vanish from her side. Files go missing. Streams cut off. Audio glitches. Cameras die. It's not paranoia when it's patterned. They're not trying to make us believe she's lying. They're trying to make her disappear quietly enough that we forget she ever spoke. Because if she stops looking over her shoulder, if she slips up just once, they'll do what they tried to do the first time. And this time, they'll make sure there's no footage left to argue with. And if they come for her again, if the world finds out too late, they'll use the same script they always use for people like us. She was troubled. She needed help. There's no evidence of a kidnapping. She was never trafficked. She was never part of anything. She was never there. Just like they'll say the same for me. They already have the lines written. The files are half scrubbed, the statements drafted. Because we were never supposed to last this long, I don't know how much time I have left. But every time Ally speaks again, I know what it's costing her. I know how they punish boldness. I know how they reward silence. And that's why I keep recording. Not because I think I'll survive, because I want someone to remember what happened when we were children. What they did, what they called us, and how they tried to bury us under their smiles and silence and suits. So if I go quiet, and she does too, don't say we disappeared. Say they did it again. Before this disappears, share it. Not for me. For her. For the ones who never got to speak. For the ones who did and paid the price. If you made it this far, you're not just watching. You're part of it now. So I like the video. Subscribe if you want to hear the rest before it's too late. And most of all, pass it on. Because silence is how they win, and memory is how we fight back.